Hey Toad Wranglers, and welcome to my 500 subscriber special. I left it up to my fans to vote for what topic they wanted me to do, and the topic you guys voted on was my top 10 favorite Warhammer Fantasy characters. This has nothing to do with how they perform on the tabletop. Some of these characters have no representation there, and at least one of them is entirely non-canon. With that out of the way, let's get rolling, boys, and thanks again for subscribing. We're going to get things started with the non-canon entry of this list. This is meant to be a stand-in for Jarek von Karstein of Stephen Savile's Vampire Wars trilogy, a non-canon retelling of the Vampire Wars of Warhammer Fantasy. Jarek was a worshipper of Ulrich and a Knight of the White Wolf, who actually bested Vlad von Karstein in single combat once, only to be turned into a vampire after Vlad von Karstein returned from a decapitation, thanks to his regeneration ring. Jarek ended up becoming a main character of the entire trilogy, struggling with his noble knightly nature and this new beastly curse driving him mad. And in this retelling of the events, it was with his help only that the humans and dwarves were able to defeat Manfred von Karstein. And it was he who sacrificed himself to ensure that Vlad von Karstein's regeneration ring could never fall into the wrong hands again, choosing to allow himself to be sealed in concrete with it forever. He also defeated one of the most sadistic vampires that fought in the Vampire Wars, another non-canon character known as John Craster, a vampire hunter who was turned by one of Vlad von Karstein's subordinates, and went on to become a sadistic monster and Manfred von Karstein's personal errand boy. But unfortunately, Jarek exists only in my heart and in the void of forgotten characters. At slot number 9, we've got the big brass beefcake himself, Taurox the Brass Bull. The guy she tells you not to worry about when she goes out with her friends. He gained his powers after biting the literal head off of a demon, going on an all-day bloody bender of slaughter, and being reborn beneath a crimson moon. He is perhaps the most powerful beastman in a straight-up fight, and might possibly be completely indestructible, at least without some kind of magical intervention. He carries rune-inscribed axes of chaos power and drinks rivers of blood he makes himself. But hey, don't worry, he's just her friend, remember? At slot number 8 might be the only character capable of defeating Taurox in a fight, Nakai the Wanderer, a 9-foot-tall crocodile man who can destroy hordes of chaos single-handedly. They say when he defended the Bridge of Stars, he slew so many demons you could hear them howling all the way from the warp. He is the hero of the lizard men who comes out of the jungle in their times of great need, often to turn the tide of battle, and I was going to make a reference to Gandalf, but I remember another YouTube video already doing that. I think it was the guy who does the Total War Warhammer character intros. He also compared Nakai to Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star, and I wanted to do that too. Regardless, every time Nakai emerges from the jungle, the enemies of the lizard men die. And every time he returns to its dark depths, all trace of him is lost. However, it should be noted that Nakai was almost killed by the poisons of the Skaven, and was even temporarily rendered comatose by it. However, he did survive, and he remains one of the most powerful lizard men to ever be born, possibly second only to Gorok in terms of raw physical power. Keeping on with the theme of unstoppable powerhouses, we've got Grimgor Ironhide, the biggest and the strongest of all of the orcs in Warhammer Fantasy. A being who has crafted himself his own little slice of heaven in a dying world, fighting the Skaven in the mountains during the winter, and the mighty warriors of Kislev in the spring, growing bigger and stronger with each battle. Grimgor Ironhide is a black orc, which were believed to have been created by the Chaos Dwarves, in an attempt to make a smarter, more docile orc to use as slave labor. And instead they created one of the biggest monsters of the Warhammer world ever. The character who by all rights should have been the winner of the end times, in my opinion. He is that absolutely terrifying edge some people forget the orcs have in Warhammer. This unyielding, unrelenting powerhouse, capable of going toe-to-toe against people wielding enchanted weapons and blessed by gods. But Grimgor is just Grimgor, and because he believes he's the best, he is the best. At number 6, I'm throwing down Konrad von Karstein, again because of how he was characterized in the Stephen Savile novel. Konrad was a mad beast compared to his brothers and progenitor. He lacked the ability to use necromancy, and instead was forced to rely on other vampires and even human wizards. And Vlad was the only of the 3 vampire lords to wage war against the Empire who never had the regeneration ring, meaning he was the only one actively going into battle and risking his life 90% of the time. And in his novel, in the Stephen Savile Vampire Wars trilogy, he's kind of portrayed as something of a sympathetic monster. He's been alive so long, he's just kind of been driven insane. And it's also implied that Manfred has been messing with his mind using his magic, slowly weakening his faculties over the centuries. Since the novel makes it very clear that everything Conrad is doing is having his strings pulled by Manfred from the shadows. But I always kind of had a soft spot for vampires who aren't really ritzy aristocrats, you know? Give me the bloodthirsty berserker vampires any day and I'm game. Alright, my number 5 pick is Gotrek Gurnisson. Gotrek Gurnisson. Gotrek from Gotrek and Felix. And my number 4 pick is his buddy Felix. And I'm just going to talk about the 2 of them together since most of their adventures happened when they were hanging out together. Felix is a disgraced noble from Altdorf. He slew a fellow student in a duel and was expelled from his university, and then he got caught up in a riot while protesting taxes. Which is Giga Chad behavior if you ask me. Gotrek saved his life, and while the 2 were drinking together, Felix swore to chronicle Gotrek's journey. Gotrek, being a member of the Slayer cult of the dwarves, sworn to die in battle fighting the enemies of the dwarves, with their first adventure together being to go to Karak 8 Peaks and slay a chaos troll. The 2 end up becoming a pretty comedic duo, with Felix being the relatable kind of spazzy character, and Gotrek is the straight man of the group. He's a pint-sized blender of chaos forces. And Felix does become a respectable warrior in his own right, having slain things like rat ogres in single combat, even a warpstone-tainted werewolf in the first book. He also gets laid a lot in the books, at least in the early ones from what I remember. But the 2 work best when they're together, because Gotrek doesn't care about anything. He rushes into battle hoping he'll die, and from Felix's point of view, he is fighting tooth and nail to get out alive at all costs. And that contrast of those 2 working together is just hilarious. It reminds me of a good D&D adventure with a good group, where 2 characters can just do the odd couple thing without being annoying. I love these guys. Pretty much all of their books are worth a read. And in Total War Warhammer, they're basically a 2-man army. Next up, we have Gorok, who is another big lizard. Big lizard go smash, make dopamine go up. He is the rock upon which the enemies of the lizard men break upon. He is also really fun to play as in Total War Warhammer. And again, big lizard go smash. And his shield and club are green, which also is awesome. I don't really have a lot to say about this. The lizard men don't exactly have fully fleshed out personalities to talk about. I just like seeing things get broken with big hammers. That's why I'm a Warhammer fan. And my number 2 spot is a Bretonnian knight. I bet you weren't expecting that because I've never mentioned Bretonnia once in this channel. Actually, I did in my Beastmen video, and I did it in a derogatory sense. So I guess you can say I subverted your expectations. I will accept all praise and applause in the comments. I better see at least 5 people type stunning and brave down there. Callard of House Garamont is an interesting character, and he's the protagonist of a duology of novels written by Josh Reynolds, Knight Errant and Knight of the Realm, where we get to see him as a cocky young knight get his ego broken by something I'm not going to spoil. I would like to cover this duology in a video of its own, get rebuilt up as a proper knight and lord in his own right, and finally earn the blessing of the lady and become a Grail Knight. His first novel is one of the best Warhammer fantasy novels I've ever read. His characterization as a cocky, spoiled brat is spot on, seeking glory in war, treating it like a game at first, slaying orcs that came out of the forest only to find that they were being pushed out of the forest by an even bigger threat, which, believe it or not, turned out to be Beastmen for once. They were the bigger threat pushing somebody else around. I've never seen that since. So yeah, type stunning and brave down in the comments and I'll do a book review on those. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm gonna do it anyway, but the more stunning and braves I see in the comments, the more soon I'll do it. More soon. The sooner I'll do it. And my absolute favorite Warhammer fantasy character of all time is Malus Darkblade. Get your laughs out now, because yes, his name is edgy as hell. But I'm telling you, there is so much character in this character that he just stands out compared to the rest of the Warhammer roster. He's a sarcastic, petty little cockroach who refuses to die. He always has a scheme to one-up somebody else. He's a dirty, roguish fighter. He has a pet dinosaur and a demon that lives in his head. And he can be genuinely unpredictable. I read these novels, and a lot of the times I have a hard time figuring out where they're going to go. You pretty much know how a Gotrek and Felix novel's going to end. Gotrek or Felix kills the big bad. Sometimes it's Felix and it's funny, sometimes it's Gotrek and it's epic. But Malice Darkblade novels are full of twists and turns and backstabs. They are the best way to get a grip of what Dark Elf society is like in the Warhammer world. It's like a den of sharks where they're constantly probing each other for weakness. Also, there's no way in hell they're dodging the allegations that they're Chaos Elves. They scheme like worshippers of Tzeentch. They revel in degeneracy like worshippers of Slaanesh. Their version of Cain seems to be a lot more brutal than the Ulthuan version of Cain. Nurgle would be the only one absent here, since getting sick is a weakness and being weak is a death sentence in Dark Elf society. But I digress. Malice Darkblade is awesome despite his edgy 13-year-old fanfiction name. At least he's not the Primarch emo Big Bird. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, or listen to it in the background while you take a dump or grind in a video game. You do you, it's not my place to judge, but I will do it behind your back when nobody's looking. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate a comment or a thumbs up. It helps the channel out a lot. Maybe you can tickle the subscribe button a little bit, but that's up to you if you're feeling frisky. And I owe a special thanks to my one and only Patreon supporter, Rob. Everybody let Rob know that he's stunning and brave. And remember to praise Primarch Big Bird. I'm out of here. See you fellas later.